what does it mean to eat halal, and how is that something that our host families can work with if they're feeling a little unsure about hosting a student who has dietary restrictions?
Absolutely. So the word halal essentially means lawful. So it can really apply to anything that's lawful for a Muslim, a non-Muslim. So the word halal food means lawful food. So essentially Muslims can really eat anything except pork or foods derived from pigs. So like things like gelatin that kind of sneak up in like marshmallows or candies, things like that. But other than that, the restriction is only particularly with meat products. It doesn't mean they can't have things like chicken, beef, goat, lamb. For meat to be halal, essentially it needs to be blessed with God's name and it needs to be slaughtered in a particular way. But halal meat actually is like very readily available in a lot of stores now. So if you go in the meat section, you can like specifically see certain foods or certain meats marked as like halal, and that's how you know this meat is halal or not. You know, host families can definitely kind of look in their area to see if their grocery options have that meat available. But at the same time, there's so many different ways to go about like accommodating a student that's only eating halal meat. A lot of students will opt for a vegetarian diet while they're here if they can't find halal meat readily. So while having meat is ideal, it's not really essential.
We do sometimes hear from families that halal meat is expensive and it's difficult for them to pay for. So what are your sort of top suggestions for if you want to avoid the halal meat in general, or just really keep it to a minimum because of the cost?
Well, I would say firstly there's secondary options like kosher meat. So kosher meat is often available as well. Some students from particular countries are open to having kosher meat as an alternative. If that's too expensive as well, because sometimes it is, I would just say treat the student like they're a vegetarian. A lot of students I have noticed that come from certain countries are actually open to eating non-halal meat while they're here, because they might feel like, you know, they're here in a temporary situation where they can be a little bit more flexible. So you might find out that your student is open to eating whatever meat you're cooking at home. But if they aren't, I would just say look into secondary protein options. Seafood is great. The other proteins I mentioned, and kind of just treat them like a student who's a vegetarian.
That makes a lot of sense. Something that host families, again, we hear are a little intimidated by, but our students are really willing to talk it out and figure things out with their host families. It's all about communication and exploring. Mm-hmm. This whole experience is about trying new things and also being flexible. So our students definitely come here with that expectation. They know they have to be flexible. It usually works out pretty well.
I definitely wouldn't say this is something that should deter you from hosting a YES student. I think it might just take a little bit of, again, like you said, communicating or having a conversation beforehand to find out what your specific students' expectations are. But either way, there's a lot of alternatives and options to work around it. And again, if it's still a topic that's confusing to you or you don't understand, you know, we're always available at the AY office to clarify anything you have questions about.